boy do I have the wrong game for you.
Bugger. Welcome to the Hall of Heroes, a place where heroes of the past go to drink, play games, and have a good time. Wait a second. Who are you?
Hey there, it's me, Ray.
Ray, huh? Never heard of you. Why are you here?
Well, I was talking about this game that I like, and then just sort of faded into here. It's all quite confusing, and I'd quite like to go home, if I'm being honest.
Go talk to the statue over there. He may be able to help you out.
Gaze upon my might and cower in fear, for I am Gerald Longsword.
Is that like your birth name, or are you just overcompensating?
What?
Nothing.
We saw you talking about Medieval, and have decided to provide you with another game. Make a video about this. You will return someday, and when you do, you will be ready.
Ready? What do you mean, ready? What? Why are you being so vague? Just tell me what the fuck is going on.
Bye-bye now.
I guess we're really doing this then.
Medieval, as I'm sure you're aware if you saw the last video, is one of my favourite games of all time, and a remake of the game with modern graphics is something I wanted for years growing up. Little did I know, a remake actually did exist, and had done since I was about 2 years old. Medieval Resurrection was released on the 1st of September 2005 on the PSP, and was the first attempt at taking Dan away from his choppy PlayStation 1 look, and bringing him into more modern graphics. Can we call 2005 modern? Despite this video being called Medieval Remakes, Resurrection isn't really a remake, but more of a retelling of the first game's events. Because of this, it makes making comparisons between itself and the PlayStation original a lot easier than if it was a one-to-one remake, something I'll get to later. This game changes a lot from the original, and to be completely honest with you, almost none of it is for the better. The incredible and memorable dialogue? Gone. The beautiful Tim Burton art style? Mostly gone. The simple yet fun combat? Gone. The easy to memorize level design? Gone. The iconic music? Actually, no. The soundtrack is actually still pretty good. It's not like as good, but it's pretty good. Medieval Resurrection also makes one of the most genuinely baffling changes in comparison to the original. The addition of a new character called Al-Zalam.
Hey! Easy, my friend.
Remember when hating on Na'vi from Ocarina of Time was like the funniest thing on earth? Well, imagine if a game studio saw all of that hate and just thought, we can make something more annoying, and then did.
This guy is literally never explained. If I was to guess, maybe he's a replacement for Morton the Bookworm, a character from the original game who's never really mentioned, but supposedly had a cut level, which is interesting, I guess. I have never had such a strong opinion on anyone in my life, fiction or not. This little bastard is genuinely one of the most annoying characters in video game history. You can't do anything in this game without him reading an entire Bible's worth of information. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Please shut up. Another change made is actually a change to the story. You now have to collect 4 pieces of an Anubis stone. Why? Because you do. I wish I had another answer to that question.
I'm not going to go over the entire story of Medieval in this video, because quite frankly, this video is long enough as it is. And also, I went over the story in my last video. If you haven't seen my last video, I'd recommend going and watching it for the context.
One thing that immediately sticks out about this game is the fact that everything just feels off. Everything is either too bright or too dark, and the atmosphere doesn't feel consistent with itself, let alone other games in the series. That's not to say that the game looks ugly, however. For a game released on the PSP, the character models and graphics look almost early PS3 quality, and it's quite impressive to be honest. Oh, and another thing that's really impressive? This game runs at 60 frames per second on the PSP.
If I was to show you this thing and tell you that it was capable of running games at 60 frames per second, you'd think I'm some lying, insane, crazy person, but I'm not. This is 100% real. The PSP runs Medieval Resurrection at 60 frames per second. How the fuck?
It's not just the atmosphere that doesn't feel consistent, as the dialogue in this game is absolutely awful at times. The original's comedy was very sarcastic and witty, and the characters moved on from jokes so that the conversations and dialogue had flow to it. In Resurrection, characters make jokes every 5 seconds, and it genuinely gives me whiplash trying to keep up with what's even happening. The dialogue also seems like it's wrestling with the original game's script, with some lines being almost word for word, and other lines just being god-awful replacements. However, if there's one character that does maintain his comedic genius, it's Dan.
So how about that gameplay then? Is it any good? Does it improve on the original's fun yet simplistic style? And do the changes made make for a more interesting game? Yeah. About that.
Playing Medieval Resurrection almost feels like you're choking the joystick into submission. The movement is so slow it's almost impressive. I feel like I don't even need to explain it. You can just see from the footage on screen that this is just slow in comparison to this. Even the daring dash, a move that is meant to speed you up, feels slow. I think recording gameplay for this video has genuinely turned my triangle button into dust. And jumping doesn't even need an in-depth discussion, just look at how floaty this jump is. Combat in the original felt quick and effective. Go up to an enemy, press X or square, it dies, you move on. Combat in Resurrection on paper is very similar. However, I'm not sure if it's due to the sluggish movement or the fact that maybe the enemies take more hits, but combat just feels so slow. I definitely feel like another factor to this is the camera. Don't get me wrong, I've made it pretty clear that I'm not a fan of the original's camera controls, and in all fairness, the camera is actually quite a bit better in this game. The issue is that it almost goes for an Ocarina of Time Z targeting style of camera, where you have to press the right shoulder button to quickly whip the camera back to behind Dan. This would be something I would hate in any other situation, but considering this is a PSP game and controls are obviously limited, I'll let this one slide. One of the biggest and most notable changes is the level design. Some of the levels are almost the same but with minor changes, and other levels are just complete redesigns. Most if not all the levels keep what made them memorable, but the additions and changes often make the levels feel too big and maze-like, with paths that look like they go somewhere but just result in you getting either a few pieces of gold or nothing at all. This also affects a lot of the puzzles and replayability. For example, instead of getting the club in the mausoleum and going back to Cemetery Hill, you now get the club in the graveyard and the hammer in Cemetery Hill, therefore eliminating any need to go back to those levels for the chalices. As previously mentioned, the atmosphere in this game just feels weird, and no level is more offensive than the Enchanted Earth. What was once a dark and chilling level with creepy music is now this muddy green colour with easy to defeat enemies. Seriously, just look at it. Why is it such a weird shade of green? Ugh. One of the absolute highlights of Resurrection is the fact that Tom Baker, yes, the Tom Baker, plays Death, and that is just awesome. I don't think I could ever complain about that man. He is an absolute treasure.
Greetings, stranger. I'm Death. It is I who ease the passage of lost souls on their final journey. The hours are hell, but I wanted a job working with people.
You never fucking know the answer when it's important.
The final thing I'd like to talk about with Medieval Resurrection is the mini-games.
Thank you for watching the minigame segment.
The reward for completing all the minigames is Woden's Brand, a sword that absolutely destroys the game. You thought the magic sword from the original game was overpowered? This sword makes the magic sword its bitch. As far as I'm aware, every single enemy bar bosses are one hit. As a reward, it's great, but having to play through 8 god-awful minigames to get it is absolutely not worth it.
You know what? I think I just need to be 100% honest with you all.
Medieval Resurrection just takes the life and soul out of a game that has nothing but life and soul, no pun intended. The original PlayStation 1 classic was iconic for its incredible art style, memorable dialogue, and gorgeous atmosphere. Resurrection, on the other hand, is iconic for being the bad medieval game, and it's so easy to see why. The game isn't a broken, glitchy mess, but as someone who's been a fan of Medieval since the age of 3, Resurrection is so painfully bad. And it's a real shame. I do believe that Medieval Resurrection could have been a good game, because in some aspects it so almost is, but many things just drag it down for me. Is there a nostalgia bias? Probably, but I've played both the original and Resurrection with people who haven't played any medieval game before, and even they've told me that Resurrection just isn't as good. So, take that as you will.
And with all that being said,
let's talk about the good one! With Medieval Resurrection being as disappointing as it was, I think it's safe to say that in 2018, when another Medieval remake was announced, I was scared. Would it be a remake of my childhood game? A game I know better than anything else on the planet? Or would it be another reimagined version to pin a final nail in Sir Dan's coffin? No, I'm sorry. The initial trailer didn't tell us much of anything, but when that second trailer dropped, I was on board. Just rewatching the trailer for this video gives me goosebumps. I wish I could watch this for the first time and feel that excitement all over again. And then, I waited for what felt like an eternity. It was only a year. But boy, was that wait worth it! Oh my god, look at it, 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 it's so perfect! Oh my god! Ah! Medieval PS4, or just Medieval if you want to call it its actual name, was released on the 25th of October 2019, which is weird because that's the same day I died of a nostalgia-related heart attack. As previously stated, I'm not going to explain the entire story to Medieval, as again, this is a remake. However, one thing I will say is that this is a shot-for-shot, one-to-one remake of the PlayStation original. The aged FMV cutscenes have been completely and lovingly recreated with in-game models, and so many of the characters have so much more expression and animation when simply talking as opposed to the sometimes static conversations in the original. Oh, and let me tell you something about those voice lines.
Right then, that's it. I've just about had enough of your meddling.
All of the voice lines are the original recordings from the PlayStation 1 version, completely decompressed and sounding as good as ever.
I'm sorry. I can't handle this level of love from a game developer these days.
Dan himself does have re-recorded voice lines, although don't worry your little heads. He is still voiced by the original game's art director Jason Wilson, bucket on his head and all. Being completely honest though, if you genuinely care about re-recorded voice lines from a character who barely had a voice in the first place...
Grow up. Go outside. Learn to play an instrument. Just take a hike. Just please find some joy in your life, you miserable bastard.
Another voice that was noticeably changed is the voice of the narrator, this time being voiced by Lani Minella, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right, who also reads all the books throughout the game, something I oftentimes completely forget about due to the fact that I know the game too well. These books are also in the original game and Resurrection, I just completely negated to mention them on account of, I forgot.
Oops!
Medieval PS4 is absolutely beautiful. Everything looks identical to how you want it to look. The colours pop from the screen, the animations are clean and flow absolutely beautifully, the skyboxes are just gorgeous, the lighting, my god, the lighting. I don't know how they managed it, but they made the lava in the asylum look so warm I can almost feel it through my screen.
I know this is kind of always said whenever a remake is released, and everyone's kind of already said it about Crash, Spyro, Abe's Odyssey, and all the others. But seriously, this is what I remember Medieval looking like when I was a kid. Like, this is just absolutely gorgeous.
The original PS1 game I described as, this game almost looks like a stop-motion Tim Burton film. And this game definitely maintains that feeling, even if due to a higher frame rate, it doesn't quite look stop-motion animated anymore. Aside from the obvious graphics overhaul, the game has seen so many small but necessary changes and improvements, such as Dan's movement. In the original, Dan's momentum almost led to what I described as ice physics, with him not immediately coming to a halt. This is fixed in the remake, thus resulting in a lot less unintended deaths and platforming being considerably less frustrating. On the subject of platforming, with jumping specifically, there's an option for more modern controls, which essentially just swaps the circle and X buttons round, as in the original game, circle was jump. Personally, I kept the classic controls on as that's what I'm used to, but more control options is never anything to complain about. Remember the camera I complained about before? That's also been tweaked to be a bit more behind Dan. Not to the extent of Resurrection, but enough to feel modern. Another addition to the camera controls is you can finally use the right joystick to move the camera wherever you want. There are certain areas that require certain camera angles, but for the most part, you can move the camera wherever you want. There's also the addition of Dan Cam, which pulls the camera to an over-the-shoulder kind of view. I've played through this game a fair few times and I don't think I've ever actually used it. The only times I've ever activated it have been accidentally.
I know I spoke about how good the original game's soundtrack was and everything, but holy shit! This game's soundtrack is nuts. It is insane. The original game wasn't done with a full orchestra, which, by the way, is nuts. But this remake was done with a full orchestra, and oh my god, it is beautiful.
The final three things this remake adds is the Lost Souls quest, the book, and the secondary weapons slot. The book is a catalogue of every character, enemy, and boss you encounter throughout the game and features some really cool artwork of said characters, enemies, and bosses. The Lost Souls quest is an optional quest that consists of you finding a lost soul in one level, taking it back to another, and then completing a little challenge, thus returning the soul to its rightful place. You won't unlock this quest until very late into the game. However, even then, I wouldn't recommend doing the quest until you have all of the levels done and all of the challenges collected. Not because the challenges are impossible or anything like that, but just because of the reward that you get from the Lost Souls quest. More on that later. Speaking of souls, another addition that I think is kinda nice is after killing an enemy, the soul of the enemy will actually go towards the chalice. This is nice as you don't have to spend ages looking for it and makes the game flow a lot better. On the subject of killing enemies, combat has been made a lot quicker, as in the original you'd have to pause and completely scroll through the weapons menu to change weapons, whereas in this version you have a primary and secondary weapon slot, and can switch on the fly with the press of the R1 button. This not only speeds up the pace of the game as a whole, but also makes using weapons like the enchanted sword where the percentage bar goes down as you hold it worthwhile, as you can use it sparingly and easily. The final addition that this remake adds, yes I lied about it being three things, is the helmet. Does this add any extra health? No, it actually adds a new harder difficulty and makes enemies deal more damage, which is just hilarious given the context of how Dan originally died.
So I've spoken about all the things that I love about the Medieval remake, but is there anything that I don't like or I think is done worse?
Other than Dancam being kinda pointless, there isn't a whole lot that I dislike. But one thing that I think is important to note is the frame rate does tend to dip at times. I couldn't manage to get it in this video, but it does, please believe me. I don't know if this is the same on PS5, as I don't own one, but I would hope that it's been improved. But other than that, this is genuinely a perfect remake, and I really do love it.
Seriously, both in this video and the previous video, I described Medieval as my favourite game of all time, and Medieval on the PS4 is that exact same game with all the dirt scrubbed off. It is truly just incredible, and that Souls reward I told you about will allow me to show you.
Oh yeah, the entire original game is playable through the PS4 remake.
Oh my god. Global warming has been reversed, world peace has been achieved! Those politicians that you want to stop doing that thing, they've stopped doing it! My life is complete! If you ever want to play Medieval, I cannot recommend the PS4 version enough. It is a polished version of an already exceptional game. And if you are even just the tiniest bit, I mean literally the smallest bit curious to try the original PS1 Medieval, it comes for free with the PS4 version. It's like £20 on Amazon! I'm being 100% serious when I say you have got to play Medieval.
Hey everyone, thank you all so much for 2, 3, 4 and 5,000 subscribers. The support has been absolutely nuts. Special thanks to Jax Films for shouting me out on his Creator Bingo series, of course. The fact that I can even say that is insane. Another special thanks I'd like to give is to Cam or Lemon VA, who filmed the opening scene in the Hall of Heroes and who also voiced both the Gargoyle and Gerald Longsword. His channel will be linked below, so go check him out. One final thing, if you want to see bloopers and behind the scenes clips from this video, then in the description there is a link to a bloopers video on my second channel. If you're watching this video as soon as it comes out, it might not be up yet, but if you're watching this video in the far future, then they'll definitely be out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Don't worry, I won't leave it 7 months again. So like, I got the platinum. What do I do now?